Hello, everybody. Adam Parks here with another episode of Receivables Roundtable. Today, I'm here with Mr. Michael Stillman from the National Creditors Bar Association. How you doing today, Michael?
I'm doing great, Adam. Thanks. Yourself?
I can't complain. Another day in paradise, but I want to talk about your recent activities up in Washington, D.C. But before we get to that, and for anyone who hasn't been as lucky as me to get to know you through the years playing golf and just being at various conferences, could you tell everyone a little bit about yourself and how you got to the seat that you're in today?
Yep, sure. Started my practice as a creditor's attorney nearly 30 years ago. Started that after working for a firm for 5 years, went off on my own, just me, myself, my lonesome, and continued to grow. The first year or few years was just a single state solution in the state of Michigan. After many years of taking over some firms, connecting with some other people, that firm today now stands, we're about 120 or 30 employees. We operate in 7 states and the District of Columbia. We have a Michigan and Mid-Atlantic and New England presence. In addition, I am now currently the president-elect of the National Creditors Bar Association.
Well, congratulations. That's a role that carries with it many responsibilities, some of which we'll have the opportunity to talk about today. Could you tell everyone a little bit about the NCBA and what it is that you guys do there?
Sure. National Creditors Bar Association is the single source for creditors' attorneys involved in consumer debt collection.
Mhm.
So we have roughly approximately 400 member firms, represent about 2,500 attorneys and thousands more staffing, of course. The bulk of NCBA members are small firms, 1 to 3 attorneys, but certainly there are some larger ones as well. I would say that my firm is on the larger side, but certainly not the largest. And we are, trying to be the single point solution for the creditors ecosystem when it comes to information, questions, education, etc., within the legal field involving consumer collections.
So as I look at the receivables industry, I've always looked at, like RMAI is kind of at the debt buyers, ACA is more for the collectors, and NCBA is that place for the collection attorneys to learn from each other, right, within that specific discipline of the receivables management space, I guess you could say.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's certainly a fair overlap, absolutely, when it comes to receivable management, a little bit less so maybe in the ACA world. Um, but essentially, our effort is to provide interaction with those groups, work with those groups where there are issues that are joint to all of us, that involve
Mhm.
all of us, and we do so. We have really good relationships with those groups. But yeah, we are a group that is exclusively made up of attorneys.
Absolutely. So I know recently you guys had done a Hill Day, right? I know all of the associations and really all of the organizations around the industry look to develop relationships, whether it be with regulators, legislators, attorney general offices, et cetera, right? As we go through the process of debt collection and developing those relationships before there's a problem at hand. What were some of your objectives with holding a Hill Day this year for NCBA?
So we held our Hill Day in conjunction with the NCBA board meeting as well. And we also scheduled a meeting with the CFPB, which we did have also. But our objective, as far as Hill Day itself was concerned, was trying to get our the news spread and try to get some buy-in and so some co-sponsors for a bill that NCBA has right now that is jointly co-sponsored by the American Bar Association, which is really a big deal because as I just got through indicating, NCBA has roughly 400 member firms. I don't know how many members of the ABA there are, but there are certainly a considerable more ABA members than there are NCBA members. So that bill is HR 7947, and it's titled Restoring Court Authority Over Litigation Act of 2024. And like
Mm-hmm.
I said, it's jointly um, sponsored by the ABA because they have a vested interest in making sure that the practice of law is um, monitored and regulated by the judiciary, where lawyers already are under that authority. That's who gives them the authority and who authorizes them to practice law, penalizes them if they do something wrong, provides them with their ethical requirements, etc.
Mm-hmm. Which is interesting because it is, a very different practice, right? When you're talking about lawyers versus some of the other things that are being done around the collection space. And I always thought it was a little strange the way that the branches seem to be crossing over here with an executive branch coming in to regulate a judiciary objective. It just always felt a little strange to me. So I'm glad it's something that you guys are consciously trying to address.
Yeah, and let me be clear, we're not trying to get some sort of wholesale exemption, right? We
Sure.
understand that there are certain things that we as creditors' rights attorneys do on a daily basis that would be more along the lines of debt collection and not the practice of law. So if we're
Sure.
sending letters, making phone calls purely in a collection type of action, we understand and expect that we're going to be regulated by the CFPB, by the FDCPA, that we are going to have oversight. We're not trying to
Sure.
get out of that. What we're trying to do is make sure that when we're practicing law, when we are
Mhm.
lawyers, when we are filing a lawsuit, when we are in court, when a judge gives us instructions, that we are not stuck between a rock and a hard place, having to serve two masters and figure out whether or not we should be complying with the ethical duties that we have under the judiciary of our states, of our individual states, or do we face the consequences of federal regulation and or laws? So that's the kind of the difficult process that we're faced with, and so that's what we're trying to get out of. And this bill, interesting enough, too, just to tell you, was actually submitted jointly to both the Committee on the Judiciary and the Committee on Financial Services, which is a
Mhm.
really good thing. So there are two groups involved, both of them having an interest in each of the factors that are involved in what we're trying to get done.
Mhm. It's interesting, kind of that layering of an approach here from a regulatory standpoint. So as you kind of have gone through the process of drafting, introducing, and finding sponsors for a bill, what are you experiencing? What are you learning through the process?
It's not an easy task, right? NCBA
It's a monumental lift.
has right. It's a monumental task. NCBA has we have our own lobbyists. We
Mhm.
have staffers who are active on the Hill. We obviously have members from every state in the country, so we have people who have
Mhm.
relationships with different House members. Um, so we're trying to get awareness. We're trying to get added sponsors. We had one sponsor of the bill who was Representative Scott Fitzgerald from Wisconsin, and there are three co-sponsors presently: Alex Monahan, Andy Biggs, and Tom McClintock. So part of what we're trying to do is just get the word out there. Having the ABA on board is huge. So it happened to be that one of our NCBA members, who has traditionally been a very active member of NCBA, serving on the board for many, many years, is actually now at present the secretary of the ABA. And
Oh,
he
wow.
happened to have been in Washington, D.C. with us last week. He was actually there for ABA stuff that was going on in the preceding days that we were there. And uh, uh, extended his stay so that he could come with us on our second day of Hill visits and make some of the visits with us to some of the congressional offices. And it was great having him there because
Mhm.
here he is coming in saying, "Hey, I'm an NCBA member. I've been active in the NCBA, but I'm also an ABA member, and I'm on the board of governors for the ABA. And this is a really important agenda item, not only for NCBA, who, just has these 400 members, but also for the ABA, that's a lot bigger.
Mhm. Little more clout comes along with kind of tying those organizations together, and I think it also helps them to understand the scope of the situation in front of them. Because if we're only talking about creditors' rights, for example, right, we're talking about a rather narrow space. We may be an important part of the credit ecosystem, but we're not a huge part in terms of people volume, right? Whereas there's significantly more lawyers across the United States than there are collection lawyers.
Yeah, absolutely. And the ABA's interest, of course, is that we're but a microcosm of the issue, right? So they're
Correct.
concerned that any one of these other alphabet soup of federal regulatory agencies are going to do this to any other group of lawyers that are members of the ABA and or attorneys that are regulated by their judiciary, whether it be in
Mhm.
the securities realm or under other FTC realms. There's so many different areas where this could be applicable. So this is just an entree into a bigger issue.
Agreed. And I think that's a great way to look at it. So help me understand. You had mentioned that you had done some other visits while you were there. Anything else interesting happening in Washington recently?
I don't know about anything else interesting happening, but we did actually visit with the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau.
Mhm.
There was just a small group of us. I think our Hill Day might have been 20 or 30 members, board members, and other members that attended our Hill Day. But just a small group of us, four of us, went to the CFPB. I think three board members and our executive director. We met
Mhm.
with a few folks there. Very interesting meeting. They were very receptive. It was really, I thought, a really good meeting. They had a lot of good questions and asked us for some input and some additional information. But I think probably the most exciting thing to me coming out of that meeting was with about maybe 5 to 10 minutes left, Director Chopra's chief of staff came into the meeting
Mhm.
and came in and he said that he saw that we were on the calendar and he wanted to come in and say hello, which first off says that, hey, he knows who we are, okay, which is a really big thing. I think that is something that's really important that we have recognition within Washington, within the CFPB. So he came in, and it turns out that he had been involved in some earlier discussions and had some familiarity and had previously met with our executive director, Liz Terry. So that's what drove him in. But really good to hear him come in and say that, he was happy to see that we were there and to acknowledge us. I mean, this is the guy that has, I'm assuming, a daily briefing with Director Chopra and has the relationship at the highest echelons of the CFPB. So it was really good to see that he knew who we were, that he cared enough to come in and just touch base with us, ask us what sort of concerns we had, and what was on our mind. So it was a really good meeting.
It's always great to have an opportunity to provide some, real feedback to those that are listening, right? And it feels like over the past couple of months, there's been more listening in Washington. Maybe that's a function of an election year. Maybe it's just a function of more listening. But it does feel like there's become more opportunities to provide at least some education on the unintended consequences that result from various actions across the space.
Yeah. And I think, look, most people, maybe not everybody, but are aware of the recent Supreme Court decision involving the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and their funding, and that it came down in their favor. They've already come down and said, "Hey, we're going to be active. We're hiring more people. We're going to pursue enforcement." So for us to be, have a close connection to them, I think is really important. And we want to maintain that, and we're going to continue to try to maintain it. I found it really interesting that one of the people we met with, they made a comment something to the effect that contrary to popular belief, we don't have unlimited resources. And then they proceeded to tell us about how they have access to all this data and whatever. I mean, essentially, they have unlimited resources. Okay, they do, and they're going to make those resources even more unlimited because they're going to be hiring more people and they're going to be stepping up actions and enforcement and everything else due to the recent turn of events and the Supreme Court's decision.
Yeah, and I feel like debt collection has gone through its round of regulatory, items with the CFPB, and it feels like the focus now is more on fee structures. I feel like almost every day I see something about another fee. I saw something this morning about mortgage closing costs, right? And so I feel like there's plenty of other target-rich environments for them to be focused on around financial services right now, and hopefully that most of this is the open lines of communications between the receivables management industry and the regulators. I feel like that communication has really benefited both sides of the equation and ultimately the consumers because we've been able to come to terms faster. Things I feel like have been laid out in terms of the collections industry wanted to know what the rules are. Like, what are the rules of the game? And early on, we didn't have clarity. Now we've got clarity, right, with Reg F. So, we've gotten a little bit more of that clarity, and it feels like we're now just in a better position for managing whatever comes next. Right, going into an election year, you never really know what's going to come around the next corner, but it's almost to a point where it shouldn't matter as much because if we've developed these relationships and we're able to create some level of trust, camaraderie, and even just good discussions back and forth about what the unintended consequences might be of a particular action, I feel like just brings us all a little bit closer to a positive conclusion for the consumers.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, the clarity that you spoke about and Reg F, it's great. I mean, it absolutely has brought a lot of clarity, but it also brings new questions, right? And those are some of the issues that we discuss with them.
Yes.
But it's great being able to have that dialogue and being able to have that access to walk in there and talk to them about it. And they
Hmm.
were receptive and they listened to us. Whether anything will come of it, who knows? But at least we had a seat at the table. And I think that's really kind of key. That's part of what I think the
Hmm.
overall Hill Day did too. That some of the people that we went and visited were people that were, when I speak about that, I mean at the Hill, at in the House and the Senate, were people that were already familiar with us, people who we have had interaction with previously
Hmm.
through attending fundraisers or whatever it may be, or even just some contact with some individuals who were constituents, whatever manner it might be. But being able to have a presence, um, as we did when we went to the Hill, was huge. It was a huge win, I think, walking into places and having some familiarity and having people be receptive to us and know who we are was a big boost.
Well, Michael, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing with me today. It sounds like the NCBA and the board are working on a lot of great things over there, and I'm looking forward to learning more. Next upcoming conference for NCBA is the NCBA Connect in New Orleans in late October, correct?
Correct. Yep.
Very much looking forward to that. That's actually my first trip out to New Orleans, so I'm excited to go explore a new city.
Oh, fun stuff. And that will be where I get to become president of the NCBA. So that'll be fun as well.
I'm looking forward to that as well. I'll be there front row taking pictures with a smile on my face. But I
Thank
really
you.
appreciate you coming on, having a conversation. Very much looking forward to your leadership over at NCBA. For those of you that are watching, if you have additional questions you'd like to ask Michael or myself, you can leave those in the comments on LinkedIn or YouTube. If you have additional topics you'd like to see us discuss, you can leave those in the comments below as well. And hopefully, I'll be able to get Michael to come back at least one more time to help me to create great content for a great industry. But until next time, Michael, I really appreciate you coming on and having a chat with me today. It's always a pleasure.
Thanks, Adam. Thanks for having me. And it'd be my pleasure to come back on anytime.
Absolutely. Well, very much looking forward to that. For those of you watching today, we very much looking forward to your time and attention today. Thank you so much for spending your time with us. We'll see you all again soon. Thank you, everybody.